My name is Jessica Paine. I'm the Director of Community Programs at the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association, and I am so thrilled about the panel that we are presenting today. Hopefully a lot of the people coming today have participated in these chats that we've had, specifically aimed at law students and at new attorneys. It's part of a series that we've tried to do since the shutdown in lieu of visitations that we had hoped to get to and going to the various law schools and bring experts and people in the field of practice to the law school and help you ask your questions. So since we can't come to you, we're very grateful that you can join us online. And with that, what I would love to do is I'd love to introduce our panel, starting with the very excellent volunteer I've known for several years, Judge Patty Gaughan of the U.S. District Court. Hi, Judge. I don't know if you want to say something really briefly about your position at the court or just a word of welcome.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Oh, quite right. I was just saying I wouldn't know if you wanted to say hello and just a quick word of welcome before we introduce the rest of the panel.
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. It is such a pleasure to be here and pick our brains. Please ask anything.
I've known Judge Gaughan for years, mainly through her involvement with the 3 R's Oversight Committee, and she has been such a huge fan and supporter of the program. We couldn't be more grateful for her help. I'm next going to introduce our wonderful Gabe Callie. Gabe, I've also known for many, many, many years through her work on the 3 R's Committee. She is a past chair, but she does a million things for the Bar Association, including work on our Women in Law Committee and in bar leadership. At the risk of forgetting any of the 1,012 things you do, Gabe, I'm actually just going to say this is Gabe Callie. She is an attorney at Prowse McCowell, but I'm going to let you fill in a little bit of the details of some of the things that you do.
Sure, Jess. So I'm a practicing attorney, as Jess said, at Prowse, and I've been practicing about 12 years. I first got involved with the bar as soon as I got out of law school. I was a student member, but really got active within my first year in the firm. Have been on a number of committees, Women in the Law, Insurance Section, and most recently proud to serve as a trustee for the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association. So a lot of roles in between, and I've met a lot of attorneys in those roles.
That's like a tenth of what you do for the bar and your volunteer work. I swear I see Gabe every other day for doing something else that's wonderful and chairing another committee. Oh, we also forgot to mention that you are co-chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee for the bar as well.
Yes.
And I know you do a ton of stuff for that as well. So we'll get into what everybody does as volunteer work, because you're all here specifically today to talk about how you involve that in your lives and what you get out of giving back. Before we dive into that, I would also love to introduce Dan Natalie. Dan is on our Justice for All committee, which is the umbrella committee that oversees all of the bar programs that are the pro bono and community support programs. Dan is an attorney with Legal Aid Society of Cleveland. Dan, would you like to say hello?
Sure, thanks, Jessica. So, hi everyone, I'm Dan Natalie. I'm one of the supervising attorneys in the intake unit and volunteer lawyers program at the Legal Aid Society. And as Jessica said, I also serve on the Justice for All committee. I'm Legal Aid's current representative on the JFA committee with the bar. I actually came to Legal Aid after being a longtime Legal Aid volunteer, and I can talk about that later, but I'm very happy to be with you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about volunteering or Legal Aid or my path to the nonprofit work. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So as probably been made obvious, we're deviating a little bit from our usual format. In the past, what we've done is focus on a panel that has a particular area of practice. So we've done estate planning and family law and other areas too. So today our panel is more diverse in terms of what they do, but they all have in common that they give back of their time. And I know it may sound a little bit cheesy, but I will never stop saying that I have the best job in the world because I get to work with volunteers all the time. So it's such a pleasure to work with people who really feel as I feel like, you know, we got gifts to get us here, and to give back to the community is a huge, important part in our lives here. So what we usually do with this is we start talking about everybody's various career paths. And I know, we've got people in different areas in their practice and their careers and different levels. But if we could sort of share what, your education was, what got you to where you are. And then as we get into it, I'd love to hear as well along the way how you were able to fit volunteering in and why it was important to you. So Judge Gaughan, if you don't mind, I'd love going back to you and just sort of, if you wouldn't mind filling us in on what your career path has been.
Certainly. Well, I should tell you, I went to Notre Dame Law School with the intent to get a law degree, but use it in business. So I really, my goal was to be in business and use the law degree for that purpose. But what happened is, well, three things happened. I took a class in the rules of evidence. I took a trial advocacy class, and then I made the moot court trial advocacy team. And those three events, so to speak, completely changed the rest of my life. After being involved with trial advocacy, I knew that I had to be a litigator. I just had to be in the courtroom. So really, it was my third year of law school. I completely did an about face and went off the business path and went on the litigation path. I had received a job offer to be an assistant United States attorney in Hammond, Indiana. So I took the Indiana bar, and because I'm from Ohio, the Ohio bar was a week later. So on a lark, I decided to take the Ohio bar just in case I would ever come back to Ohio.
Like you do, for fun.
What the heck? So I fortunately passed both bars, and I sat and waited for funding to come through for the Hammond, Indiana position. And I became very impatient because all my friends were out working, and it was the fall. Then it started in the holidays. And I just said, I can't wait any longer for this funding. And I passed the Ohio bar, so I applied to be an assistant county prosecutor. I fortunately started that job, and 30 days later, the funding came through. But I made the decision that it would not be good form to quit a job after 30 days. And frankly, the rest is history. After being an assistant county prosecutor for about 8-9 years, I then became a federal prosecutor. I then went back to state court and did some civil work and prosecuting. And then I made the decision to run for judge. I ran in 1986, elected, took office in 87, re-elected in 92. And then I was very fortunate that I was nominated in 95 for the federal bench, and I took office in 96. And for the past 3 years, I've been chief judge of the United States District Court for the Northern District of Ohio. So that sums it up.
It's funny, when we're doing these panels, one thing that I've noticed a lot in people saying their career, and I can definitely share with that myself, is we start out thinking that we are going to be one thing, and we are positive that that is the thing that we are going to be. And then we experience something that we say, oh, wait, no, just kidding. I absolutely want to be this other thing. And then it's as if the door opens and the light shines through.
And Jessica, I'm the poster child for that. I really am. And my message to everyone is you have to keep an open mind. Mm-hmm. You have no idea the opportunities out there and the options you may have. I never had it as a goal to be a trial lawyer until I took those classes. I never had it as a goal to be a judge until I was in one trial. I wasn't happy with the particular judge.
And you're going to name that judge now, right?
No, it's been so many years, but no. And I made the decision, I can do better than this. And that moment I said, I'm going to run for judge. So you have to keep your minds open to all options and opportunities. You never know what path you're going to end up on.
Absolutely. Does that ring true for you, Gabe and Dan? Any particular resonance with either of you as well that you don't know until you try it?
Oh, Absolutely. So before I went to law school, my educational path, I went to Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. I was a double major in political science and Spanish. So I thought I was actually going to become a Spanish teacher. So I was in a master's program, a Spanish language master's program, and I spent some time abroad in Spain. I taught English in Spain. I thought that I would bring that back, and I had the opportunity to work with, I'm originally from Southwest Ohio, from the Dayton area, and I had the opportunity to work for an organization that provided services to migrant workers in the greater Dayton area. There's a large migrant worker population because there are a lot of nurseries and a lot of agriculture in that area. And I started to see the issues that a lot of our clients experienced, not only access to agencies and other public services, but also courts and the law. And some of it was immigration questions and some was other access questions. So at that point, I really wanted to not only use my Spanish to serve and to be of service in that way, but I became interested in legal issues. So I decided to go to law school, and I went to Case Western Reserve, and I became interested in public interest law because I still had that desire to use Spanish to help others, to use my legal degree to help others. So my first job actually was, I was a staff attorney at the Cleveland Housing Court. And then I went into private practice. I worked for a small immigration law firm on the near west side of Cleveland. And then I found my way back to legal aid, partially because I had continued to volunteer for legal aid. I was a volunteer in law school. I helped with brief advice clinics. I kept in touch with a lot of those connections at legal aid. And then when an opportunity opened up at legal aid, I really went for it because I enjoyed those experiences, helping clients through brief advice clinics and other volunteer opportunities.
So it sounds like for you, it was the desire to volunteer that drew you to the law. Because we find that it kind of goes both ways. I've heard from volunteers who are passionate from the get-go, and that's why they did the law, and some that once they were in the law said, I would like to give back. I have these skills and I want to give back. So it's interesting to hear it go sort of both ways. Mm-hmm. Gabe, what was your experience like?
So I had pretty much always known that I wanted to go to law school. And even in high school, had taken sort of an after-school job just filing papers with a small law firm that did subrogation work, which is a type of insurance work. And I love the people there, but I hated the job. I love the people, and I was like, okay, at least I know going into law school, I never want to do insurance law. I know that much. I never want to do insurance. And so I went into law school and took litigation classes, so I wanted to be a litigator, and had a professor say, I have an insurance law class. I think you'd really be interested in it. You should take it. And I said, no, I know I don't like insurance. And he says, well, what did you do? And I said, well, I did subrogation, and I know I don't like insurance. He's like, well, my class isn't like that. Just take the class. You can always drop it and take something off if you don't like it. So I signed up for the class, and it was completely different type of insurance, and I loved it. And I'm actually a certified specialist by the Ohio Supreme Court in insurance coverage. So I am an insurance lawyer.
As fun as I knew the punchline to that story too, but it's fun hearing the journey. So, I mean, that's another great lesson though too, is that, you may think that something is definitely not for you, but you've got somebody in your life who says, okay, you might not have liked spinach when you were younger, but believe me, spinach is delicious. And you're like, wow, spinach is delicious.
Yes, completely would have never thought I would be an insurance lawyer, except for that's what I am, and I love it, and it's been a great experience. And so part of it was just sort of keeping, as Judge Gaughan said, keeping an open mind, because I knew I didn't like insurance, and I thought all insurance because of my one experience with one area of insurance. And I still think if I did that area, I might not like it, but I've learned that within insurance, there are 4 or 5 different areas that I didn't even know about. And so just keeping an open mind helped me find what is ultimately the practice I love.
Yeah. Judge, something you said when you were talking about the beginning of your career really struck me, that you were waiting for the funding to come through and that you were bored and wanted something to do and were itching to get into things. And I imagine, obviously, it's very, very different for people who are graduating now and taking or either just took it or are looking to take it, I guess, in the fall now. It's been postponed back to September. Are there any similarities, any advice that you would give if you've got this sort of hiatus period? What should you be keeping your mind open to? Any other advice you've had for the people who are in that situation of, I'm raring to go, but my circumstances are not such that I can do exactly what I want right now?
Well, I would say 2 things to that. First, you're going to be working for the rest of your life, especially having committed to law school. It's the type of career you're going to be probably not veering off the path. You're probably going to stay on it and work in the field. Take a deep breath, relax, enjoy the time that you do have off, because you're not going to get much of it in the future. I know these are very frightening times, difficult times, but we're going to get past all of this. And if you're the type of person that just can't sit back and relax, start working on your resume. You can still send out applications to law firms. I will tell you, sole practitioners are always looking for people who can do research and writing, even if it's on a motion by motion, project by project, hourly basis. Mm-hmm. So offer your services. So get out there, send your resume, propose that you be an hourly employee, so to speak, per motion. And if you can't do that, volunteer your services so you can start building your resume. And show that you have had contacts with lawyers, you have been brief writing, etc., during this very uncertain time. And then, of course, on the non-legal side, there's so many organizations that would love your help. And especially when you say you went to law school, because law schools attract a certain type of person. And that type of person, organizations want, a go-getter, somebody who is a self-starter. So that would be my advice. But first and foremost, try to relax and appreciate the time that you do have off. And don't get so caught up in, am I going to get a job? What am I going to do? All my friends have jobs. I don't. It's going to happen. Just be patient.
It's nice to hear you say things both about, volunteering with organizations that are legally related, but in this time that we're all in, as in it is uniformly across the board that the class this year is all facing this incredibly discouraging job market that we hope is going to recover soon with the country. But that you can also look at where else your skills can be used. I think we have one volunteer who's a member of our Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts Committee. She is currently a law student. She had an internship lined up this summer that unfortunately fell through, as a lot of people are seeing anecdotally. I've gotten a lot of emails from people saying that. And she turned around and is sewing face masks to donate to the Children's Hospital. And I think things like that, you want to think, what are you giving back? And you're doing this for the reasons because you care about the community. But you're right, you can look also with an eye towards your resume. She's doing that out of the goodness of her heart, I'm positive. but it's not going to hurt that she can say, I turn around, this is what I did with my summer. That is a heck of a my summer vacation essay to write.
It's a side benefit to be able to build the resume. It really is.
Yeah. Gabe, I know that you were raring to go through law school and your first year of law. How did you balance that in terms of volunteering and doing all the stuff that you do in every aspect, balancing home life and work and volunteering stuff? I've always been amazed. I swear you spend 20 minutes a day asleep. That's it. So
Well,
because I know a lot of people are overwhelmed at the thought of, I'm already doing this so much, how can I also volunteer?
Well, for me, it was part of looking at it as an investment in yourself. If you have a job at a firm or a business or an organization, that's great. But at some point in time, you want to build your own brand. You want to build your own identity, what you want to be known for. And for me, volunteerism and getting to know the other lawyers in the community was a big part of that. I didn't just want the people within my office to know who I was. I wanted the larger community to know who I was, and if an interesting project came up, that they would think of me. In fact, some of the things that I've done that I've been most proud of, the volunteer opportunities didn't come because I had sought them out. It came because someone thought of me and emailed or called me and said, would you do this? Because I had volunteered or, been seen at other events. And so part of it is thinking of it as an investment in yourself, and then not feeling like you have to do everything for everybody. Look at what's going on and what you're truly interested in. If you are interested in the environment, go to an environmental law meeting or, some event where other environmental lawyers are getting together. And then it's not just something for you, it's something for them. They get to know you, they get to know that you're interested. Because people are always looking for people they can refer to others or they can ask to help them with an issue. And that really is what being a lawyer is about, is solving issues. And so you have to be out there and people know who you are to be able to solve an issue.
Yeah, I think you make an interesting point too, because I think you are kind of the poster child that I think of when not only do you volunteer in terms of giving your time back in direct service to the communities that we're looking to work with, but you also volunteer through leadership a lot. I think you have learned a lot over the relatively fewer years that you've been in practice than some of the people that we work with, but you've already taken on so many leadership roles. What do you get out of taking on leadership within an organization like the bar?
Well, for me, it's a great opportunity to better understand how the bar runs. You join these organizations and you say that I'm a member, but it's better to know how the organizations run, who's making the decisions, so that when you have an idea, you actually know who to run the idea by and say, this is what I'm thinking. Is this doable? Is this possible? And so not just the lower level volunteering, but knowing who the leaders are in a section or a committee, all the way up the organization, makes it more likely that you get things done, because that's fewer people that you have to figure out what they do, because you already know them, you already know what they do. And so just getting involved in the leadership roles allows you to really get, sort of deep in the mix of what's going on in the organization and what you care about.
Yeah, absolutely. Sort of switching tracks a little bit. Dan, since your story is so much one that I feel like your volunteer work and your career are so intertwined, how do you think that's informed your practice and, who you are as a professional?
Yeah, so for me personally, I have really approached being an attorney and the practice of law as a vocation of service. So I knew that I wanted to serve others. I knew that I wanted to have a feeling in my work that I was helping others resolve problems. So that's really why I became an attorney, and something that I've tried to bring to my practice, not only at Legal Aid, where we're trying to resolve fundamental problems for low-income individuals, but even before, when I was in private practice, it was something that I brought to my work when I was an immigration litigator, trying to help others resolve problems in the immigration system, which is a complicated system. It's often a broken system, and I've tried to approach my representation of clients and my practice really treating clients with dignity and viewing it as a profession where I'm in service to someone else.
I love that vocation of service. I feel like a lot of the volunteers that we get to work with would call it the same. I want to get back to sort of the practicalities of volunteering, and I'll open up to all three of you. I mean, have you run into any times where you thought, I cannot do this, I just already have too much on my plate, but then you were drawn back in, or you found a way to manage it? Because I know that is something that worries a lot of people, is how can I possibly fit all of this in? Maybe less so now that so many of us, unfortunately are working from home or might be underemployed. But in those times, what have you found draws you back to volunteering? I don't know to anybody if that resonates with you.
Well, I'll put my 2 cents in. There's going to be a time in your career or in your life that you're having a hard time juggling it all, particularly if you become a parent. And at those times, I found that organizations were very understanding. As long as you're honest with them, you don't just put the organization on your resume and you don't contribute at all. And that for me is very important, because I think we all know people who join organizations to get it on the resume, and then you never see the person again at any meetings, etc. So you have to make some contribution, but there's going to be various times in your life where your contribution isn't going to be as great as other times. And that's okay. That really is okay, because we can't do it all. And if maybe I'm going a little off of your question, but I feel a need to say this. When I started out, I didn't have a family, I was single, and I received a lot of self-fulfillment. I felt service because of the nature of my work. I was a prosecutor. I felt like I was making a difference. Then a judge, I felt and still do that I make a difference every day. So when I started out, I tended to volunteer more with the legal organizations, the Cleveland Metropolitan, back then, Cleveland Bar Association, Gaughan County Bar Association, and then later the Federal Bar Association, paralegal studies boards at Ursuline College, Notre Dame College. So it was more legal because it allowed me to network, get to know other lawyers, get to know judges. And then I found, as I was in the profession longer, I wanted to fulfill other passions, my non-legal passions. And that's when my volunteer work went from legal more towards the non-legal. And I have to say this, I had a former law clerk recently come to me and say, Judge, I like my job and I'm being paid a healthy sum of money, but I'm not sure I'm feeling fulfilled. And my response to her is, most people aren't in a job where they actually feel service, that they actually feel fulfillment. But don't throw out that job because of it. Try to find your fulfillment in volunteer work. so you can have the best of both worlds. And it really resonated with her. And now it's a couple of years later, she's still at the job and even happier at her job because she has taken on some volunteer work, and she does feel as if she has both. So I just have to throw that out. It's not this rule that you have to get this sense of fulfillment in your job. You can find it elsewhere as long as you're happy in your job. If you're not happy in your job, move on. Cut your losses, get it on your end, move on. You should never stay at a place where you're not happy. I'm sorry, Jessica, I just had to throw that out there.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. I feel sometimes I go a little too woo-woo when I talk about that feeling that you get with volunteering too, but I think anybody who's ever done that gets that. One of the things I keep going back to is when we did a training for new 3Rs volunteers at one of the law schools a few years back, and we had a currently volunteering law student saying to the prospective volunteers, you know, when I am looking forward to my 3Rs lessons, I'm not thinking of it as something that I have to do. It's something that I get to do. So it's a bonus to your day, not another responsibility. Does that resonate with you guys too, that it's a feeling that you get to do this and it's not another responsibility hanging around your neck? Or what sort of feelings does volunteering bring for you?
Oh, absolutely. It's a feeling of, you know, it makes you feel good. I mean, the volunteering that I do, legal aid by its very nature, we're helping facilitate legal services and pro bono services. So the volunteering that I do actually is not legal in nature. I do a lot of volunteering in the music ministry at my church, right? So it's not legal related at all, but the reasons that I do it and continue to do it despite having a family, and sometimes I've found that it's hard to squeeze it in, is because of the feeling that it creates. It's so nice to do something to give back to the community in a way that's not related to my job at all, actually, and it's great, and I have fun with it.
Yeah, and that could be something too, definitely. You can mix the volunteer work with something that's legal and put your skills to good use, but I absolutely agree. It's a good thing too to do something that's outside of the law and sort of gives your brain a rest from that. Gabe, do you do anything that for volunteer work that is non-law related that you'd want to talk about?
Sure. So for me, a lot of my passion has to do with political science and sociology, which are what my degrees are in from undergrad. I do a lot of volunteering as far as sort of food bank volunteering and making sure the society has food and its needs are met. And I enjoy that experience. I really enjoy sorting cans. And
it's deeply satisfying. I did it at the food bank once in the cold room, and you're sorting things as it goes down the conveyor belt. It's satisfying. It's like Tetris.
It exactly is. And so I enjoy that. And then I also do volunteering with, sort of getting out the word in voting and the census, which, doesn't, I don't do, my volunteer work for that isn't on the legal side of, what issues are rising. It really is just the knowledge side of, making sure people have information that benefits their community. And so the idea of knowing that what I'm doing actually, helps people in the community, and it doesn't necessarily require them to, know me as a lawyer per se.
I definitely get that too. I'm going to go back to something that you were talking about a little bit earlier, is the networking aspect, especially as somebody newer in your career. And since we have talked about why we do volunteer, it is for the good that you do, it is for the feeling that you get from it. But in practical terms too, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about what practical good it does for you as somebody just starting out in your career, what good it does to volunteer. And I think about what you said, Gabe, and think about one of the benefits of doing a program like the 3 Rs is you put on a team with other attorneys and judges like Judge Gaughan, and you get this unique opportunity to demonstrate not only do you want to be where you are as a volunteer, but what you can do, that you are reliable, that you can think on your feet. All these things are going to help you. Do you guys have any experience where doing something in volunteer work either led you to help somebody else's career, or that your career was boosted through volunteer work?
So I would say speaking for myself, you know, what Judge Gaughan was saying earlier about appreciating the time off either between taking the bar and waiting for results, taking the bar and getting that first job. Boy, I wish I would have heard those words at the time, because I appreciate Judge Gaughan emphasizing that it's okay to take a break. It's okay to feel proud of as far as you've gotten up to that point, and the job will happen and the job will come. And I knew that I was interested in public interest law. I knew that even in the best of times, public interest law jobs are not always very available, or they're in very high demand. So I tried to stay connected through volunteer work, either through the Legal Aid Society, through the Immigration Bar, and through the Bar Association, with those attorneys and connections that I hoped would lead to professional relationships and perhaps career opportunities. And I would say that my, I was a staff attorney at Cleveland Housing Court. That opportunity came to me kind of because I had a friend who worked at Cleveland Housing Court, and she shared with me that there was an opening. But when I was hired to work for the immigration firm that I worked for, that person, the principal of that firm, she was a professor at Case at the law school, Jennifer Paine. And when she had an opening, because she saw that I had routinely come to her to see if there was any way I could help out, I was present at brief advice clinics where she was there. She thought of me when there was an opening, and it led to an opportunity, which was huge. And then she actually became an immigration judge in Chicago, so she ended up winding up her practice. So I had to look elsewhere, but I found my way to legal aid, and I am grateful for that opportunity because I had stayed in touch with a lot of the same people in the volunteer lawyers program and in the intake department, where I had been a summer associate in law school, and I had maintained those connections by continuing to volunteer, by checking in, by seeing if there was any way where I could help. And I'd like to think that it made a difference. Here I am. But I really think it's important, number one, to give yourself a break and to be proud of where you are, but also to realize that these volunteer opportunities are going to foster the kinds of personal connections, and you never know where it will ultimately take you. And it really is a long-term investment sometimes.
I have to say that some of my closest friends are people I met through volunteering, being on the Collaborative to End Human Trafficking, the St. John Medical Board, Magnificat High School, and I have to say 3 Rs. I mean, I knew all of my team members, but we have become extraordinarily close over the past 10 years doing 3 Rs together. So that's been a side benefit I never would have anticipated, just meeting some really good people and establishing these close friendships. And I'm very fortunate. I'm now at the point in my career that I'm not really looking for help, I can help others. And I've been able to help people that I've met through my volunteering, people whose children want to be an extern with me. I've been able to get them positions with other judges, etc. So there are so many side benefits to volunteering that you don't even think about until, Jessica, the question is asked. And then you say, you know what? Yeah, there has been a side benefit that you really don't stop and think about. But they're huge benefits.
Well, I think too about the relationships that you formed, not just with your teammates, but that we've seen you form with your 3Rs teacher, and your loyalty to her and her clear loyalty to you.
Right. You're absolutely right. And I'll tell you, the former teacher, actually one of the lawyers part of the team, took on her motor vehicle accident case. And they've gotten to be very close. And now the teacher we have now, we still communicate, even though she's on maternity leave. We're texting each other all the time. So you're absolutely right. It's just been such a blessing. And I am going to speak up for 3Rs in particular. And I have to tell you, I always said if I didn't go into law, I wanted to be a high school teacher. And I didn't become a high school teacher, but I've been able to satisfy that itch by doing 3Rs. It's just a fabulous program. And when you get a group of kids that are so excited when you're there and they respond to you, boy, when you walk out of that classroom, you are on top of the world. So I have to speak very highly for our 3Rs program and encourage everyone to look into it and to volunteer.
Oh no, don't talk up the 3Rs. For anybody,
we're just waiting, weren't you, Jessica?
For anybody who is watching who isn't familiar with the 3Rs program, there's information on the Bar Association's website. It is one of our largest volunteer programs, where we have volunteers go into the high school classrooms and we teach concepts of constitutional law in small groups with the students. It's interactive and it's fun to do, and it's been breaking my heart that we haven't been able to be in person there this year, and we don't know what it's going to look like in the fall for the schools. We're working out what we can do and how we can help, but it's one of the examples of the programs that this whole COVID-19 situation has made us morph and change with that. And I think that's going to be part of the flexibility that we have to show with these programs, and see how we can bring them to the people we're trying to connect with remotely, doing what we can, and doing programs like this to reach out through webinars. This might be a little bit more of a stretch. We'll give you a second to think about it, but I would love to hear if anybody has experiences. Obviously, this is, unless any of us was around during the time of the Spanish flu, this is probably a very unique experience in anybody's life. We've never had something like this, but can we think of any other time where you had to adjust, maybe very deeply, maybe very quickly, in terms of your volunteer work, and sort of pivot and make something work differently instead? I mean, I can start. I was volunteering as a tutor for Seeds of Literacy, helping adults get past the different portions of their GED. And I was walking out of a session one time thinking, maybe I can't commit to once a week. And another volunteer asked me to serve on the board. And I was like, sure, I have more time. And it turned out being one of the most fulfilling experiences of my life. So any time that you've had where, you started with one experience and you had the flexibility to move it into a different experience as volunteering.
So I will start. For me, that came about probably about 4.5 years ago. I have a 4-year-old son, and had gotten pregnant and was very excited, and sort of getting ready to, temporarily wind down my practice on maternity leave. And then I was approached by the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association to serve as chair of the Women in Law. and co-chair of the insurance law section. And I was in the midst of winding everything down, and I was asking to chair these things. But they were both committees that I was very active in, and so I said, sure, I can fit this on my plate. And it actually worked out well, because a lot of the time, after really the first month and a half of maternity leave, there's points in the day when you're literally looking for something to do with your adult brain, at least for me. And so for that, I was able to then sort of pivot and start working on what was needed to help the organizations run, and rely on co-chairs and previous chairs for advice as to how to do it. So I wasn't alone in figuring things out. Had other people to bounce ideas off of, but sort of being willing to take it on initially, and then just sort of reaching out when I needed help, and just plugging ahead basically got me through.
Well, I had a very unique situation. I was recruited basically to be on the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. And I was a bit hesitant. It's a fantastic organization, a fantastic cause, but I didn't at that time feel like a real connection to it. But they talked to me a few times about it, and I finally said, okay, it is a good cause. Of course, I can advocate for this, and I can do some good work. Well, just a couple years after I became a board member, my brother-in-law was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And then a few years after that, my own husband was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And talk about going from, yes, this is a good cause, I'm going to contribute, and felt I did, to it absolutely being this incredible passion on my part, and my role absolutely switched, and I became vice president, and it just put myself into it 100% as opposed to maybe the 75% I did earlier. So that's the only situation I can think of where my role absolutely did an about face once I was in the organization. And I was so grateful that I had been asked to be on it, and that I actually said yes, because then I was armed with probably more information than most people are when they are faced with a diagnosis like that. So it took some of the fear out, and I could act more than react to help my brother-in-law and then my husband. And they're both doing well, by the way.
So one of the things, sort of taking a step back from volunteering, even though that is our focus, and just sort of concentrating more on what's going on around us right now, in as we seem to hear all the time, these strange and troubling times. I like to ask each of the panelists usually, what have you seen that has changed in your individual practice? And you can also tie in your volunteer work. What have you seen change in the past few months? And then to add a bit of hope, is there anything that we've seen change that you hope actually carries forward as the country starts to recover? And maybe Dan, I'll start with you.
Sure. So legal aid, we have been closed to the public, in terms of physically closed to the public, since March 16th. So I've been working from home since March 16th, and what day is it today? Oh, May 14th. So, okay, right. So our practice at Legal Aid changed overnight, really. As I said, I'm one of the supervising attorneys of our intake unit and our volunteer lawyers program, and the way in which we screen clients, take in clients, and then serve those clients either in-house or through our volunteers lawyers program changed overnight. We have completely switched to a remote intake system. So all of our intake specialists take calls from their house, logged into our phone queue. And so clients call into the phone queue on the telephone that's publicly available, and they reach one of our intake specialists who are taking the call to their cell phone in the comfort of their own home. One of the ways in which we serve clients that we're not otherwise able to directly serve in-house is through brief advice clinics run by our volunteer lawyers program. And because of social distancing restrictions, we've not been able to continue with those brief advice clinics in person, and we will likely not be able to continue with those clinics in person for quite some time, actually. We've had to close our doors for walk-in intakes, which is a significant way in which our clients access our services by just walking in and completing an intake. So that's very challenging. But what we're working through right now is trying to find ways in which to serve those clients through virtual clinics or brief service opportunities to still pair those clients with volunteer attorneys, because we still know that we have, in some ways, more attorneys than we had before who are ready to answer the call to step up and do pro bono work. It's just finding the way to meet, to have those attorneys meet with clients when it can't be in person has been something that we'll continue to work through the volunteer lawyers program. But we have an employment clinic where we serve clients that have various employment questions, or unemployment compensation questions, certainly with COVID-19. And we have volunteers who are willing to provide brief consultations to those clients. We're working through right now, actually, how to do family law brief advice clinics to get our pro se divorce clinics started virtually or otherwise remotely do those pro se divorce clinics, which serve a large number of clients, particularly in Cuyahoga County, but also our other counties in our service area. So it's changed the way that we have delivered legal services for sure, but legal aid is still very much open. We're still taking requests for service. We're still serving clients. We're just doing it in new and creative ways, which has meant that we've had to engage with volunteers in new and creative ways. And we're still very much working out all of the kinks with that. But I think we're all very hopeful that we can serve clients in better ways. The brief advice clinic model, it was new and innovative when it first got started about 10 years ago. We had lost some volunteer interest. Some volunteers weren't willing to give up a Saturday morning to come and volunteer at those clinics, but they might be more than willing to give an hour or two of their time throughout their normal day to do a brief consult with clients. So it's really an exciting way to kind of jumpstart brief services and brief advice again.
Do you think that's going to carry forward, that, knock wood, when we go back to whatever our new normal is and we can do more things in person, do you think that legal aid is likely to continue to at least provide some options to meet virtually and give attorneys that flexibility?
I think so, especially if the tide seems to be moving toward more attorneys being interested in providing brief consults on their time as opposed to during a previously scheduled clinic time. I guess we'll have to see in the next couple of months what the volunteer interest is, but I really think that this is a model that we could move forward with and utilize going forward.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. We're obviously a lot in the same boat with a lot of the programs that we're doing, including the pro se divorce clinics that we do with you guys. So Judge, I know that things have been interesting with the courts. Interesting. Have you been able to see any cases remotely? How have you guys been dealing with this and coping with this in your area?
Well, I will say, by the way, I became chief judge, and only months later we had a government shutdown. And then within 2 years, we have this pandemic. So I think I jinxed it when I became chief judge. It's been a challenge.
You're to blame. We should have known.
Right. It's been a real challenge. You know, we have over 200 employees, and they are almost exclusively teleworking. And we have been doing almost exclusively video conferencing, both civil cases and criminal cases. You know, the CARES Act has allowed us to do our criminal matters via video conferencing with the consent of the defendant. So we have really been doing a lot of it by video. The area that has been hurt the most are trials, particularly in the criminal arena. Other than that, I like to say we really haven't missed a beat, especially in the civil arena. I have just this morning had a settlement conference by telephone, and we're talking about doing a follow-up settlement conference via Zoom, because you can place one attorney in a waiting room and talk privately to the other attorney and vice versa. And it's been very successful, according to, you know, I've asked my colleagues how it's going, and they seem to think it's the way of the future, that we're going to have more of that, because in federal court, we usually have at least half of the attorneys from outside the state of Ohio. And so it's costly and time consuming to have to fly in for any type of conference in federal court. So I do think that the benefit of this, if we can say anything's a benefit from this horrible experience, is that we are going to be doing more civil by way of remotely. And I think another challenge as a chief judge for me is in the arena of employees. I think employees are enjoying teleworking. It saves them money. It saves them time. They have more time with their families because they aren't wasting traveling to and from. And I think it's going to be a challenge for employers to keep an open mind to perhaps continuing to allow teleworking, and yet balance it with, it's important for morale, camaraderie, that there's some times when everyone should be in the office together. So I think it's going to be a real balancing act, but I think it's something we now know, based on this experience, we have to do. We can't be closed to no, there will be no teleworking, which I think a lot of employers were at. And so I think the future is going to look different because of this experience.
So we're coming rapidly towards the end of our time. So maybe just quick fire with our panelists. If you could reach out and say directly to a law student or new attorney, words of encouragement for volunteering, what would you say, Gabe?
My words of encouragement would be just to find an activity and get involved. Even if it's just a cold call or a email to someone you don't know, people are always looking for persons who are enthusiastic about their mission and wanting to get involved. So just get involved, and before you know it, time will pass.
Dan, what would you say?
So I would say that I think volunteering and being involved are one of the strongest ways that you can continue to have the connections that'll really be an investment for you later on in your career. So especially now for those law students or or young attorneys that, you know, just passed the bar, might be still looking for a job. The last thing you might want to think about is volunteering, because you want to have a paying job, but really that volunteer work fosters so many connections that that can really help you later on. And for attorneys, especially right now, I'll give my little plug for legal aid. If you go on our website, lasclev.org, there's a sign up if you'd like to get involved with legal aid as a volunteer attorney. We also have a sign up for law students, although as of right now, to be perfectly honest, we're not sure how we're going to best leverage law students because normally law students do intake and other non-direct advice, obviously, or direct legal work, but still sign up. I encourage you to sign up. We are always looking to reach out to new volunteers and leverage our volunteers in new ways, and we'd love to have you volunteer for us and be part of our team.
Judge, any final words before we head out?
Well, I'm going to be really practical. I know where you're at in your career, and you're probably more concerned about your resume right now than anything else, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's understandable. Volunteering helps your resume. That's the practical side of it. However, I'm going to add, it will reap so many hidden, unforeseen benefits. And I can't possibly sit here and list them all. I think we've tried to do that in the past hour, but just trust me, there are so many benefits to volunteering other than, yes, it looks good on the resume. So you have the practical aspect, and then you have the feel good, networking, etc. benefits. So do it.
100% agree. So with that, I want to thank everybody from my heart for your time. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you everybody who was watching and will be watching, because we were recording and are going to post this again later. Best of luck to you, and we will talk to you again soon. Thanks so much.
Good luck, everyone.
Thanks, good luck.
Bye-bye.